right. Hello. Welcome to the podcast, Eat Better Food Today. I'm your host, Ken Coonihan, and I'm excited to be sharing insights on why we believe that health and longevity begins with the food we eat. The goal of this podcast will be to inspire, educate, and enable folks to live a healthier life and do it affordably. My wife and I have been on this journey for over 10 years and continue to work on it every single day. Percent of the profits from this podcast will be put towards child hunger with an initial focus on the poorest suburb in America, East Cleveland, Ohio. As a reminder, please subscribe to this podcast and be sure to visit my website, Eat Better Food Today, for links to the show, videos, and all the recipes, books, and articles our guests provide. And this week, starting chapter 2, we are changing the podcast music. My cousin, Alex Inest, and his violinist, Elizabeth Boyce, created this for me, and I hope you like it. On this episode, we're grateful to have Madeline June from the Cleveland Clinic. Madeline was appointed to the Cleveland Clinic in 2021 in dermatology. She received her undergraduate degree from Michigan State and her graduate degree from Kent State. As we have focused on health and longevity as it relates to food, exercise, sleep, community, and purpose, today we will discuss the health of our skin. We are in the season of vacation, beaches, and lots of sun. Additionally, social media is causing lots of young adults to be more conscious of their skin, so we'll explore those topics today. Madeline and I met at the very entertaining consult at the Cleveland Clinic late last year. I know she is very excited to share her thoughts with us today and what continues to inspire her. Welcome, Madeline.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
I always get very interesting answers to this first question that range from a cup of coffee to a full meal. So let's start with what you had for breakfast this morning.
Well, I have this sausage that I like. It's like a chicken sausage that I like to, it's just like 30 seconds, you pop it in the microwave. But my microwave, the fuse kept blowing. And I don't know why. And I was like, it was the whole thing. So I couldn't eat that because the microwave would just not work. So I ended up having an apple and like a beef jerky stick. But I really wanted my chicken sausage.
You really wanted your chicken sausage?
Yes.
They're usually pretty good.
Yes.
So, kind of the next question is, what have you learned so far from your journey and out now that we know about the farm, from the farm to Michigan State to Kent State and now the Cleveland Clinic?
That's a loaded question. I feel like I've learned so much in my journey, and my journey actually started in the ICU. I was an ICU nurse for 5 years at the Cleveland Clinic in the medical ICU, and I had a passion for intensive care, and I did that for 5 years, and COVID hit. And during that time, being an ICU nurse during COVID and having COVID patients, a lot of my patients unfortunately passed away. And it really took a toll on my my life as a nurse. And I felt like, I was in school getting my master's, and I knew that I wanted to be a nurse practitioner, and I wasn't sure what specialty at the time. I was thinking, more pulmonary, things like that. But as I kept going during COVID, my spirit was crushed. And dermatology, I've always been interested in dermatology, and so it really just drew me towards dermatology because for the most part you have really great outcomes in dermatology, and there's so much preventative things that you can do. I just felt like I had more control, and it just feels great now to be practicing in dermatology versus the situation I was in before, where when you have something like COVID, like what do you do? So this journey has really brought me a lot of different ways, but growing up on a farm, I've always been passionate about sun protection because as a farmer, you're in the sun all day long, every single day. So it's really, I have a great, background in that kind of aspect and how I can, teach my patients how to protect themselves from the sun with personal experience.
Nice. It's like a lot of nurses gave up after COVID. They just got so burned out from that experience. They just didn't come back.
Yeah, and it just took a toll. Like we ran out of body bags. I mean, we just, it was awful. And then the patients that didn't have COVID, they couldn't have visitors because during COVID you couldn't have any visitors. So these poor patients that were dying of other things were alone. And so the nurses and I would take turns going in there to hold their hand while they passed away because they couldn't have visitors. So it just really takes a toll.
It definitely takes a toll. I had some uncles that passed away. They were in their 80s. One was 78. It was a tough time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So dermatology.
Yes.
So I looked up some of this stuff, but it comes from the Greek word derma, which means skin. And our skin is the largest organ in our body, which I guess I really never thought about before, to be honest with you.
Yes.
So it does have a big impact on our health. And I understand that about 44 million Americans, which is a lot of people, visit a dermatologist annually. So can you kind of explain in just layman's terms what the Cleveland Clinic provides for patients in dermatology?
Yeah. So dermatology can be broken up in different kind of sections too. So we have medical dermatology. So any type of skin problem, you can see a medical dermatologist or dermatology provider. I say dermatology provider because we have dermatology nurse practitioners like myself, dermatology physician assistants, and dermatologists who have an MD or DO. So there's many different kinds of providers, but we are all, trained to provide dermatology care. So you can do medical dermatology, we have our cosmetic dermatology, and then we have our more surgical dermatology. So, if you have something you want cut out, like a lipoma or a cyst, you would see our surgical dermatologist. Or if you have some wrinkles that you wanted to take care of, you would see our cosmetic dermatologist who offers things like lasers and Botox. And if you had a rash, you would see one of your medical dermatologists. Medical dermatologists also do skin cancer screenings. So you would come in and kind of like how we met, come in for a skin cancer screening, and we look everywhere to make sure you don't have any signs of skin cancer and kind of go over ways to protect yourself from skin cancer.
Nice. So we're kind of in the middle of summer season. The weather's been great, maybe a little warmer than usual. What advice can you share with us relative to protecting yourself from the sun this summer?
Yeah.
And I've asked you this question in some emails before, so.
Yes, yeah. So there's many ways you can protect yourself from the sun. Number one is sunscreen. Big advocate of sunscreen. It's important that you use an SPF 30 and above and reapply every 2 hours. And if you are, getting in and out of the water, sweating more, maybe think about reapplying a little bit more than that. They also make really great UPF clothing, which is clothing that you can get. You can only get it almost anywhere now, but it's clothing that protects you from the sun, and it kind of gives you that extra protection. You just have to be careful with the UPF clothing because they're not as effective after a certain amount of washes. So if you get a UPF piece of clothing, it usually tells you on the tag like only good for 40 washes. So that's something to keep in mind. I don't think people realize that after 40 washes, not as effective. So you may want to think about replacing it.
So there's something on the material. It's not the material itself, I guess.
So it is the material itself,
Okay.
but through wash, it's kind of like wear and tear. So it's not as effective.
Okay.
So that's something to think about. Also trying to stay out of the sun during like peak sun hours, because that's when the UV is the highest. So that's really important. And then just trying to find shade when you can. If you're just like, standing in a parking lot having a conversation with someone, just jump in some shade. Because the sun you may not get a sunburn from standing in the sun for 10 minutes, but you're accumulating damage over all of the years, starting from when you're born until now. And you have to keep in mind that it's cumulative damage that causes the problem. I know a lot of people say, well, I have a skin cancer, but I always wear sunscreen. Well, you probably started being religious with sunscreen when you were 40. Think about all the years from 0 to 40 when you weren't wearing sunscreen and all that damage that has accumulated over those years.
I never wore sunscreen until I was an adult. I mean, when you're a kid, you're fearless. So you just...
Yeah, and you may not burn. Just because you don't burn doesn't mean that you're not getting exposure.
Interesting. So when you say peak hours, define peak hours for people, I guess.
So peak hours are like 11 to 3. It typically is like those peak sun hours. So if you are like a big runner, I would recommend running in the morning or in the evening. Try not to do anything in the sun in the middle of the day. And if you are, wear that sun protection. Wear those UPF clothing, wear your sunscreen, wear your hats. Wide brim hats are huge because it protects your ears, because a lot of times people forget about their ears, even when applying sunscreen in the back of their neck. Also like gloves, like we get a lot of sun exposure on our hands. And with my dad being a farmer, I always have him wearing a wide brim hat. He wears a long sleeve UPF shirt. He wears gloves. He wears sunglasses, because you can even get skin cancer like around your eyes. I've found a lot of skin cancers definitely like on the eyelid margin. So sunglasses can protect your eyes along with sunscreen. I also put sunscreen in his toolboxes because all tractors have toolboxes, so I stick a tube of sunscreen in there, and he has no excuse not to wear it.
Very persistent.
Yes, and he has cab tractors, but he has one that doesn't have a cab, but he got a shade, like a sunshade, put on it, so now he can protect himself more. So just trying little things to just keep yourself out of the sun.
Nice. How about for young children versus teenagers versus adults as far as sun protection?
So technically FDA approved sunscreen is for 6 months and older. Typically it's like that because there isn't any really studies on any kids 6 months and younger. So since it's not approved for 6 months and younger, we recommend just trying to keep them in the shade just to protect them from the sun, because they're not really supposed to be wearing sunscreen at that age. And then 6 months older, same thing. They have a lot of great little hats for kids, and like their strollers have, what do you want to call it? Just
like sunshade.
Yeah, like sunshade. Yeah. And just trying to take advantage of those things is the best. And I think teenagers is hard because they just want to be out in the sun with their friends and they want to get a tan and this, that, and the other. But I think our kids these days, like that are in their teens, are starting to realize the damage that the sun does for them. And I think they're being a lot smarter.
So I think social media kind of helps with that point. But on the other point, I guess I want to talk about social media and dermatology. And at least I've been reading that kids are becoming very self-conscious because of their skin on social media. So any advice there or comments, thoughts?
Yeah. I have a lot of patients that come in because they saw this trend on TikTok and this is what they're doing and it's not helping or it's making it worse. And a lot of the things on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and things like that are either, they're marketing schemes. A lot of them are marketing schemes because these influencers are getting paid money to promote something that may not actually be effective. Also, a lot of times kids are watching these, not even kids, I mean, people my age are watching these things, and so they want to try to incorporate everything they see and they end up overdoing it. In a lot of instances, like the less is more when it comes to skincare. So a lot of times people come in with like irritant and contact dermatitis from just using too many things on their face, and a lot of people have allergens and they're using things on their face that they may not realize they're allergic to. So it's making things worse, and then they try something else to try to make it better. A big thing like Neosporin, for example, about 30% of people are allergic to Neosporin. So that's something to keep in mind too. I see that often where someone comes in, they're like, I had a cut and now I think it's infected and I've been putting Neosporin on it every single day. And what it is actually the Neosporin that's making it worse.
Okay, I've never heard that before.
Yeah.
So what do you recommend for kids? I mean, versus paying attention to social media, what should kids be doing, I guess?
So I think it's important to talk to a dermatology provider. Like if they really want to set a good skincare routine for themselves and prevent, maybe also trying to figure out what your focus is. Is it anti-aging? Is it acne? Is it dark spots? You know, there's different things that you want to target, and that means you need different products and routines. So I think just consulting a dermatology provider is the best way to know what the best thing to do is for yourself.
Yeah, I just talked, I mean, this is not skin, but it has to do with exercise. But I just recommend on my last podcast, if you're going to start exercising and you're not used to it or you haven't done it for a while, you should get a professional at least help you get started to get a routine before you just start hurting yourself, basically. So it's kind of the same with, like you're talking about different products, too many products, same thing on the skin.
Yeah, and they could be using something that they saw on TikTok, and I think that it's great, but it could not be doing anything for them. There could be no benefits, and they think that they're getting all these benefits when they're not. And in skincare and skin routines and things like that, it takes a long time. It's not something you're going to see overnight results. It's something you have to be consistent with.
So, skin symptoms report to different areas of health in patients. So this was kind of something that seemed kind of interesting to me anyway. So when you're looking at skin, so it's kind of like we talk a lot about food, and different foods have different effects on chronic diseases and diabetes, etc. So I guess what can you see from a skin standpoint that might indicate things with diabetes, or read about kidney issues or cancer or those type of things? What might be some warning signs, I guess?
Yeah. So it can be interesting. So different disease processes can cause different things. So sometimes people that have like chronic itching, that they just feel so itchy all the time, we like to work them up for different disease processes that could be causing that itching. So sometimes that can be like a warning sign. So if someone's having like this itching and they don't know why, and we've cut back, we have them on gentle skincare, we have them moisturizing, and we do all like the basics first, and they're still not improving, then we do lab work and see if there's any systemic problem going on that could be causing this. So that's something that we like to look for. Psoriasis actually, and so psoriasis, the newer studies are showing that psoriasis can put you at an increased risk for cardiovascular disease. And so
define psoriasis.
So psoriasis is when your immune system, it's autoimmune, and basically for whatever reason we are producing more skin cells than needed, and so we develop these it's called plaque psoriasis. We develop these plaques. Most of the time it presents on the knees, the elbows, and the scalp. We can see like nail pitting with psoriasis. And so someone that has psoriasis, because of all that chronic inflammation, it can put you at risk for cardiovascular disease. So we recommend anyone that has psoriasis to follow with their primary care doctor every year, just to make sure you're being screened for cardiovascular disease. And just following a healthy diet, like with whole foods, fruits, and vegetables, because if you have psoriasis, you're already at increased risk for cardiovascular disease. So it's important to follow a healthy diet to help kind of combat that.
So dermatologists talk about healthy diets.
Yes, I know, we do. And studies show too, there's not a whole lot of great studies. I think we need more, but they're showing that whole foods, fruits and vegetables, for example, they can enhance your skin barrier protection. And it can also help with photoprotection. So it helps, it's like an added protection against UV. And it can just overall help your skin, and just in general, I'm trying to think of the word, like the way it looks. I mean, it looks healthier. It's because you're eating those whole foods and vegetables. So that's something to think about too. Another thing is acne. High glycemic diet where is found to make acne worse. So it's important, if you are experiencing acne, to try to focus on a low glycemic diet, along with, I think, topicals, different topical medications. I don't think that just doing a low glycemic diet is going to make your acne disappear, but I think it's going to help it a lot in conjunction with topical medications or oral.
So when I was in sales, which was for a long time, but we used to have these kickoff meetings beginning of every year. So you'd go to a big place, Las Vegas or someplace, and they'd serve you food. And after, it took me 5 years, but every time I went to these shows, I would break out every single time. It finally dawned on me it was the food I was eating. So I had to start paying attention. I didn't eat the food anymore that was being served. I had to kind of figure out how to get food myself. But it took me 5 years to figure out, why was I breaking out every time I thought it was nerves or something else, but it wasn't. It was the food.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because a lot of patients report that dairy makes their acne worse, and studies that haven't really proven that. But I also think that if you can link something to making your acne worse, then everyone's different. It's just because they can't prove it in a study doesn't mean it's not true.
Right.
So
right.
I think just listening to your body is huge.
So should people think about getting testing done? Is that when you talk about the dairy or any other cause, I guess?
So testing wouldn't really show you anything. With allergies, you could be allergic to certain foods, but it's not going to present as a rash for the most part. It might, if you have an allergy to something, you could get a rash around the mouth. You get that throat tightness, things like that. That's the biggest thing that will present on the skin, except for a gluten, like celiac, can present something called dermatitis herpetiformis, which is a rash. It's like a punched out looking rash on elbows, sometimes our buttocks, our forearms. And people that present with this rash a lot of times don't know that they have celiac disease. So that's something that can present on the skin that people don't realize that they have a celiac disease. And some people don't have the GI symptoms, but they have the skin symptoms. So I have some patients that have the skin symptoms, but not the GI symptoms, but they've had a test done, they have celiac, but they don't want to give up gluten. So we have to try to treat through it.
So have you ever tried, because this is something we've talked about on the show before, but my wife, other people, the gluten intolerance is based on the wheat that we have in the U.S. versus a wheat that you find outside of the U.S. basically. Any ever recommend a non-U.S. based wheat or a more natural whole grain, I guess? Or do you just say your celiac's no gluten?
Yeah.
That's kind of the answer.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay. Intolerance is different than having celiac. So,
yes,
yeah.
exactly. And I wonder too, I'm not as read up on this, but I wonder if you have more of an intolerance and you're eating outside of the U.S., if you're able to tolerate better is kind of what I'm thinking. But I think if you're celiac, no matter what.
Yeah. Okay. So what are your thoughts on the cosmetic area of dermatology?
I think it's great. I think that if you want to look younger for longer, seeing a cosmetic dermatologist is a great idea. And there's also things that we can be doing just without, because sometimes cosmetic dermatology can be expensive. But there's a lot of things that we could do without having to pay all this money. Number one is sunscreen. It is, I'm sure you've seen pictures, but for example, like truck drivers, because they're driving and this exposed to the sun on the left side, you see them as they age, and their left side of their face is more wrinkled and droopy versus the right side of their face. So if you want to look better longer, sunscreen is huge. SPF 30 and above, reapplying on the face all the time, and it's gonna help a ton. It's gonna help with dark spots. It's gonna help with wrinkles. So that's something I recommend. Also retinol. Retinol is great. It is really one of the only things FDA approved for anti-aging that you can use. Retinol increases skin turnover and helps with fine lines, wrinkles, and is something you incorporate every night. It can have huge results down the road.
So that's a topical cream, the retinol?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
You can get over-the-counter retinol, and then you can get prescription ones too. They're a little stronger. But I think it's a great thing to incorporate into your regimen. And we use actually retinol to treat acne. So I tell like my teenagers that I'm treating for acne with retinol, I'm like, when the acne's gone, I would still use this because it is great for just general anti-aging.
Are you allowed to recommend products?
Yeah, sure. I really like Differengel. It's a dappling, which is a type of retinol, and it is great because it's marketed for acne, but you can also use it just at night as like a retinol, if you don't have acne, because it's going to have those same benefits. I really like there's a few like medical grade products that I really like SkinCeuticals and things like that, but not always the more expensive products are going to be better necessarily. A lot of it is the same ingredient, but their marketing is just better. So for example, like my mom, she wanted to be on like a routine but didn't want to break the bank, so I have her on CeraVe retinol at nighttime, and then in the morning she does just a gentle cleanser, a vitamin C serum, and a moisturizing cream, and that's it.
How about on the sunscreen side? What would you recommend?
So there's two types of sunscreen. There's chemical sunscreen and there's mineral sunscreen, or physical is another name we call it. Chemical sunscreen, basically it kind of absorbs into your skin, and it absorbs that heat and basically absorbs it and then gets rid of it. And so that's one way sunscreen works. And then there's the mineral or physical, which is like an iron oxide that you put on the skin, and it's a blocker, so it blocks the sun. And depending on what you're going for, so I'm just happy if my patient wears sunscreen. I don't care what kind it is, just wear it. But some people are like, I don't like this way this one feels, or so I've noticed that a lot of patients like Neutrogena's sunscreen because it feels less sticky, it just goes on easier. So that's a big one that I recommend for patients who have that don't like sunscreen. But I do like mineral sunscreens because it is, people are starting to talk about sunscreen, and that's how it causes apparently cancer. And so if it's not proven, and if you're worried about that, then I would recommend a mineral sunscreen for you because it's more of a blocker. So there's some, I really like the La Roche-Posay mineral sunscreen. And most places now, brands have both a chemical and a mineral sunscreen that you can choose from.
Okay. I didn't know that either. See, I'm learning.
Good.
That's why I'm asking these questions. So what can you share, like, outside of the clinic to remain healthy? I mean, what else besides sunscreen and the retinol, I guess, can you recommend?
Sunscreen is just so huge. Like, that's like my biggest thing. But hydration is great for the skin. A lot of people don't moisturize every day. And our skin barrier, as we get older, it's not as strong as it used to be. So we can leak out that moisture a lot easier. So it's important to use a thick cream every day on the skin to help it keep it moisturized. I really like CeraVe's or Cetaphil's. It's not going to break the bank. It has added ceramides that helps rebuild our skin barrier and really just provides great hydration for the skin.
So when you say the skin, are you talking about the face, the hands?
Everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So this is the battle I'm fighting. So as you get older, your muscles decrease, your bones decrease, and now you're talking about the skin as well. So
yeah, exactly.
All right. So food as medicine is a topic that we've talked a lot about on the show. Do you have any opinions on food as medicine or healthy eating? We talked about the whole fruits and vegetables can kind of help skin and help the UV, et cetera. Any other thoughts in that area?
Yeah, I just think that your skin is going to be overall healthier just by eating whole foods and vegetables, and it's going to help protect against a lot of things. One thing too that people don't always think about is wound healing. You need a balanced diet to have wounds heal. And so a lot of patients struggle if they don't have a healthy diet to heal wounds. Definitely on your lower legs, we see a problem because the lower legs have, it's farthest from the heart. So it's a lot harder for those wounds to heal. So to have a healthy, balanced diet is really going to help wounds.
Nice. Ultra processed foods. So how do you define healthy whole foods versus ultra processed foods, I guess?
So I see it as try to go for products that are fresh. So fruits, vegetables, obviously. Whole grains, and definitely meats that are, for example, I prefer getting my meats from like local butchers. My family has a farm, so I get all my beef from them, and my dad's buddy has pigs, so I get a lot of my pork products from him, and so I try to locally source my foods because what's going into them. I think that's super helpful.
Nice. So how about, do you have any stories about patients that have come in, they've had, I'll just say a skin issue for lack of a better, and just you've helped them solve a problem in a positive way?
Yeah, I have a few. One is I had someone come in, he had a hat on and he was like, I got something on my head, like, can you look at it? He takes it off and it's a golf ball size tumor on his head.
Oh wow.
And it ended up being a squamous cell, and he was just so embarrassed. He just didn't want to. People are super embarrassed of things on their skin. So I think giving them that environment where they're not embarrassed to show you, because people can get skin cancer on their genitals. It's having that rapport with your patients and making them feel comfortable, because there's a lot of areas that they're scared to talk to you about. For example, like genital warts. That's something that I see all the time, and these patients are mortified. And you just have to have that environment where they don't feel afraid, and just being that person that's there for them during their treatment. So I've had a lot of good success stories with patients who have problems that embarrass them. Another big one is hidradenitis suppurativa, which is this is
I don't know what that is.
It's very, very common. It's not really talked about, but you basically get these patients describe them as boils, nodules. In a lot of times we see them in the groin, the armpits, under the breasts, and it's kind of it's our hair follicle in conjunction with the glands that form these big boils, essentially, big. and they can tunnel under the skin. So if you don't get it under control, it can cause a lot of problems, and patients are embarrassed, and they don't want to come in and talk to you about it. And once you start treatment, you could do a lot for them, and have them on a regimen to help protect it from getting worse. And so that's something interesting too, that just having a healthy environment for these patients to tell you what's going on is huge.
So that's something you remove, would you treat with medication?
Treat with medication.
Medication, okay.
Yes, yeah, and there's a lot of different steps to it, and different things that work for certain patients and not others. And smoking is something that can make it a lot worse. Smoking actually can cause a lot of problems for the skin. Causes a lot of damage to the face, wrinkles. You get those smoker's lines around the mouth. They can make your pores enlarge and fill with just crap from the smoking, and it's just not great for the skin at all. So that's one thing that I do encourage my patients to stop smoking if they want to increase and get a better result with their skin.
Everybody just talks about smoking in their lungs, not the skin, so that's interesting.
Definitely takes a toll on the skin too.
Through the clinic, is there any research being done about skin cancers, dermatology, any things that you're aware of that can be shared?
Yeah, we're doing a lot of studies on a lot of different things. That with AI, they're trying to incorporate AI into skin cancer screenings. So they're working on that.
How does that work? I mean, everybody's doing AI something, so.
Yeah. So they're basically trying to come up with something that's going to be able to detect a skin cancer. It's a little over my head, to be honest, because I don't understand the AI part of things. But they're somehow trying to figure out how an AI program can detect skin cancer on the skin.
So did they do it through an X-ray or a CAT scan or CT?
No, more like cameras.
Oh,
yeah.
Interesting.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's interesting. What else was I gonna say? I can't remember. There was something else I was gonna mention, but now I forget. Keep talking, I'll remember.
Okay. Well, maybe if you can share a few publications that I could post, I guess that would be from an evidence standpoint. That'd be great. So I know the clinic does a lot of research.
Yes, they definitely do.
So, what would you say is next for you?
So, I love medical dermatology, but I also like the cosmetic aspect of dermatology. So I'm kind of dabbling in that, which is going to be fun. And the Cleveland Clinic, their physicians practice cosmetic dermatology. It's kind of a part of our brand, and so I'm not able to do Botox and things like that at the clinic. So I'm just getting a little side job it's called The Well in Westlake. I'm really excited. And we're doing Botox filler, lasers, and just being able to have that full treatment for the patient. For example, I will treat patients all the time for acne. When we say success stories, I love treating acne patients because they come in with such a low self-esteem, and we're able to turn them around, and they look awesome after we've got them all treated. But they have scarring that's left behind. So I'm excited to be able to go somewhere where I can do lasers and fix that scarring and things like that, to really just help them get rid of those scarring that kind of reminds them of that past of their acne, and really get them to the point they want to be.
So is that through when you talk about the acne piece, is that through medication? I know you're talking about food, but medication also to kind of.
Yeah, so with acne, I mean, people can have really, really, really bad acne, and changing your diet isn't going to help. I mean, it will help a little bit, but at the end of the day, they have some really good medications. One in particular that I love, it's called Accutane, and it's a wonderful medication for people who are struggling with severe acne. I love prescribing it. I think there's some side effects that can happen, but you're monitored closely throughout the whole treatment, and at the end of it, patients are so happy. It's one of my favorite things is that last visit with them when they stop their Accutane, and they're like, you changed my life, and it just makes me so happy.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So now you're going to be able to see them through to, when you talk about the lasers, kind of completely.
Yes, and that's one thing I felt like I was missing at the clinic, is being able to do that. And the nice thing about dermatology, it's so broad, and I love every piece of it. And there's some people who just focus on the skin cancer aspect, or there's some people that just focus on maybe there's one thing like hair loss that they really hone in on. I love just everything, and so I want to be able to provide everything for my patients, and so I'm excited to do that.
Nice. Yeah, we just had a doctor on the show a couple of weeks ago. She just talked about and like functional medicine at the clinic I've talked about before, but they kind of ask enough questions to completely understand kind of what's going on. It sounds like you've got, with your new endeavor too, kind of like the full life cycle.
Yeah.
As it relates to dermatology, so,
Yeah.
which is cool.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, and I feel like too, like patients come in for their, skin cancer screening, but they also want to talk about their appearance too. And I think it's, and now I have a lot of that knowledge too, to be able to talk about both. But some of the treatment options I can't do at the clinic, which is unfortunate, but I can just do it somewhere else. I can do both.
Nice.
Best of both worlds.
So I know you like to travel.
Yes.
So do you learn anything in your travels as it relates to what you're doing with dermatology, skin, etc., or you just go and have fun?
I go and have fun, but I also like to, it's interesting to note the different places and the different skin types. Every skin type should be wearing sunscreen, but the darker skin type you have, you're more protected.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just interesting, like certain cultures don't really use sunscreen and others use it heavily. So it's just that it's interesting to see that aspect and people being like, well, my parents never had skin cancer and they never had skin, and it's that's interesting. Oh, I know what I was going to tell you about studies. So there's a lot of gene mutations that cause increased risk for skin cancer. So that's a big thing that I see is, for example, that P10 mutation, the BRCA, Lynch syndrome, and there's a few others that can put you at increased risk for skin cancer. So if you feel like you're getting a lot of skin cancer, sometimes it's important you could get genetic testing done just to see if maybe you have one of those genes. And sometimes those things can put you at increased risk for other cancers. So that's something.
So if you find out they have one of those genes, what do they do? What's the recommendation, I guess?
Yeah. So I'm sure you've heard of BRCA mutation. So those patients have, obviously a whole lot of screening for other things, and then they also get yearly skin checks. If you have bouncing off of like what we recommend for skin cancer screenings, if you have a mom, dad, brother, sister that has a history of melanoma, we recommend that you get yearly skin checks, because there's really no great guidelines for people that don't have a history of skin cancer and how often they should be getting skin checks. So if you have mom, dad, brother, sister with melanoma, if you have a mutation that, they'll usually tell you with like a genetic counselor, you should be getting skin checks. But just something to keep in mind.
Nice. All right, so I know you brought a few notes. Are there any questions that you thought I was going to ask that I didn't ask?
I think I covered everything, because I wanted to talk about the TikTok trends and stuff, and just you should talk to your local provider, dermatology provider, before you pick up and like a lot of this stuff is expensive products that kids are spending their money on, and I'm like, that's not going to do anything for you, So that's definitely something important to think about. Like, don't spend all your money on something that may not be effective. And yeah, I think I hit everything that I wanted to discuss.
Okay. All right. How about we always end with a recipe? Under $25.
Yeah.
Under 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Family of 4.
Okay. So this goes back to this morning, that chicken sausage that I really wanted to eat this morning. I love to get. They have like a lot of different flavors of different like chicken sausages or turkey sausages that you can get, and I like to cut them up and cut up diced up sweet potatoes and then broccoli, and then I just bake it. And then you just kind of mix it together. You can put different sauces on. Like sometimes I'll do like a honey garlic sauce that I'll just whip up and put on top. Sometimes I don't put a sauce on, and I will just just not use a sauce, or just salt and pepper. But there's a lot of different variations of this. Like I call it like a one-pan meal. You could just put chicken or a couple types of vegetables on a pan, and you just put it in the oven for 20-25 minutes. It's done. It's healthy. It's delicious.
Nice. And it's easy.
It's easy, yeah, which is great.
Anybody can do that under 30. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites.
I've not had a chicken sausage recipe yet. So.
Yeah, it's delicious, and I like to do it for like meal prep too. Like I'll make it. I know it serves a family of 4 because I make it and I eat it for 4 meals, and then for the 4th day I'm like, oh man, but it's good. It's healthy.
Nice. All right. Anything else you want to share with our listeners before?
wear your sunscreen. I
Wear your
know.
sunscreen.
That's
Yeah.
Oh, another thing, Vaseline. I love Vaseline. If you have a cut or a wound, Vaseline is your go-to. It helps
Really?
promote wound healing. Yes, and there's really nothing in it that you could be allergic to. So Vaseline is like, when I first started working at the clinic and learning about dermatology, they're like, oh, put Vaseline on it, put Vaseline on it. And I'm like, we must have stock in Vaseline. Like, I just don't understand. But Vaseline is the best. And I always joke with my patients, I'm like, do you know what you're going to do? They're like, put Vaseline on it. I'm like, yes, Vaseline and sunscreen. I have like tubs of each in my apartment. I love it. It is the best. So that's something else too, just a side note.
Something else I've learned today.
Yeah, Vaseline's the best.
Nice. So I'm going to kind of add a little segment here at the end of every show. So it's kind of like in an effort to get folks to eat healthier foods that are in season. I'm going to start sharing like weekly seasonal fruits and vegetables that you can kind of get locally. So, I mean, in the Midwest here anyways, summer, there's a tons of stuff out there. So I just went to a farmer's market, Shaker Square Farmer's Market this morning. So right now we have blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, cherries, lettuces, garlic, and onions. So you can just go every single stand that we went to this morning, the exception of people selling flowers, had those, fresh fruits and vegetables that you could get. So and I'm going to post on the website too. There's actually it's not my website, somebody else's website, but you can put in your state and the month, and it will also recommend what's in season. So just an effort to try to get people to eat more local in-season products wherever they live. So Madeline, thanks again for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. This was super fun. I was nervous, but it was good.
All good. Great conversation.
I lost my words a few times. I'm like, oh, what I'm saying, but no.
You were fine. Any place that if you listeners want to look you up, find you, where would they do that, I guess, on social media?
Yeah, I have LinkedIn, if you want to add me there. And then obviously the Cleveland Clinic website has some of my information, but I think now with my little new side gig of doing more cosmetic stuff, I think I might make my Instagram like public and more towards like that kind of thing. But I haven't decided yet. I feel like it's a lot of work,
It is a lot of work.
And I'm like, I don't know if I'm cut out for it. So we'll see.
All right. Well, thanks for being on the show. Thank you very much.